The king is dead. Long live the king. Well, House of the Dragon, penultimate episode of our first season, and both a lot and not a lot happen in this episode. It starts with, the big event, the king is dead, which was easy to guess based on the previous episode that was where things were going to kick off, but that is a big event. That is undoubtedly a big event. That shakes things up. That forces people to start making their moves. But at the same time, not a lot feels like it actually happens here. I feel like the most interesting stuff, at least to me, generally went around Alicent because, and this is consistent with what I have found interesting about her as a character, which is that she's in the small council and they're all talking, and it becomes evident that this plan to put Aegon on the throne and to cut out Rhaenyra is something that they have been planning in the background for a while, and that Alicent basically just handed them the means to be able to do it. And she is realizing, oh, this isn't just about you wanting to fulfill the king's final wishes. This is something you were planning to do regardless. I just made it easier for you. And her discomfort with that. I find it interesting. I find it interesting that she's not without ambition. She's not without a sense of, willing to do not great stuff. We'll get to some of it later. But at the same time, she's not devoid of a conscience. She does not fully rationalize that anything she does is somehow justified. She does still seem to have an inherent sense of this is not how this should be going down, even though it's going to result in the end thing that I want. And seeing that push and pull from her as a character is what makes her interesting. I'm not going to say I'm necessarily rooting for her. I've said before, I'm not sure there's anyone who I distinctly root for at this point, but it does make her interesting to watch, knowing that she has that inner conflict going on. Beyond that, there's, they have to track down Aegon, which is a subplot that takes a surprising amount of time, like two different people looking for him, but ultimately it didn't even really matter which one got to him first as far as the story was concerned. So I'm not sure why that was dragged out for as long as it was. We'll see if the whole thing with like the children fighting and the woman like giving the information to the Hand of the King in exchange for like a pledge to look into and put a stop to the child fights. Like, I'll be curious to see if that comes back at all, because right now it feels very superfluous. And honestly, if there's an issue that this show is failing at least the first few seasons of Game of Thrones were better about. So, okay, let me back up for a second. I've said that I enjoy seeing the politics come back, given that by the time it was done, Game of Thrones was about battles with swords and catapults and dragons, and much less about political machinations. I find the political machinations more interesting. So I'm happy to have those back. That having been said, while the original Game of Thrones had a focus on, the lords and the heads of houses, etc., it was a lot better at keeping tabs and reminding the viewer that, there's ordinary people just living as all this crap is going on. This show has not been able to do that. In fact, this particular episode shows a massive disregard on the parts of both the characters and the narrative as a whole for the ordinary people. A very callous one that I actually, and I'm hoping gets called out about the character that engaged in that, but I kind of expect it won't, which would make the show as a whole rather callous on that issue, which frustrates me. Like I can get definitely these characters being incredibly callous towards the concerns of ordinary people. Like, they are obsessed with themselves and their own family lineage. I get that. Right now I'm afraid that I'm going to be left with a show that also doesn't seem to care about ordinary people. That makes me a little bit less comfortable, because like there is always a difference and a distinction between how the characters feel about something and how the show and the overall narrative appears to feel about something. And this is a case where I do not want those two things to line up. Again, I'll come back to that as well. Um, Aegon is, he doesn't want the throne. He's reluctant. I don't find him particularly interesting. Based off what we're finding out about him in terms of his own inclinations, he's basically Joffrey if Joffrey didn't actually want to rule. He just wanted to do whatever the heck he felt like. Whereas Joffrey wanted to use the position of king in order to do whatever he wanted. Whereas Aegon just wants to do whatever he wants, but does not want that responsibility. So he's just, he's there. He's functional. I don't find him that interesting. His brother with the eye patch, whose name I can never remember, Aemond. Is that him? Too many of these people have names that are too dang similar to each other. The Targaryens got to come up with some more diverse names. Seriously. But he's just kind of there, and he I don't know what his deal is. Cuz if he wanted the throne, letting his brother get away would be his best move to do so. So, and I don't entirely get what his deal is right now. He's a vicious bugger. I got that much, but to what end? I'm not sure right now. Understanding what these characters want helps in most cases. Some of them it works that we don't fully know what they want. As is the case with the little, for lack of a better way to put it, the little spy master or whatever that Alicent is dealing with, which brings us to a scene that, I need to address. So, the foot thing. So, he's providing her with information, and she's taking her feet coverings off and just sets her feet up, and he appears fixated on them, and then he just starts touching himself while staring at her feet, and while she will not look at him, is very clearly aware that what he's doing, with the implication being that this is kind of how she's at least not necessarily guaranteed his loyalty, at least this is part of his reward is feet. So I'm kind of mixed about this. On the one hand, not here to kink shame. Foot fetish is one of the most common fetishes in existence. If you get off on feet, I don't care. This guy gets off on feet, I don't care. However, so in terms of how this universe of shows has previously handled the way that women characters have enticed the men around them, this is pretty low key. And I'll take it certainly over the idea of her semi-willingly or possibly even unwillingly allowing him direct physical access to her body. So on a scale of how gross would it make me feel, this is on the lower end, but it's not off the scale. It does still make me feel a little bit gross in terms of that, okay, yes, he's not physically coming into contact with her, but that's kind of a distinction without a difference in this case, because for his purposes, he's still using her to get off. Just because it doesn't require him to physically touch her does nothing to change what this means to him, and doesn't really do anything to change, how she is clearly uncomfortable with this. And it's one of those scenes that I feel like I can't definitively make a case either way, in favor of or against it yet, because I don't know how well the show as a whole understands how creepy this is, and or if it'll ever come up again. Not that I'm saying I want a foot scene every episode, but the ways in which she is choosing to, so I want to see the show be more definitive about, is she using him, and this is kind of the bone she throws to him to get him to do what she wants, even though she doesn't like doing it? Or is he using her because he has absolutely no conscience and is willing to arrange for people to die if he can look at the queen's feet? Or is it like a mutually using each other, which I guess is the implication right now? Like, I don't understand the power dynamic of what's going on, which I think actually contributes a lot more to my discomfort with the scene than anything related to the actual nature of what's going on literally in the scene. Um, I just I don't the power dynamic and who's using who and to what extent and how much either of them are fully aware of exactly what this means in a power dynamic sense. If it was too open ended for me to be however comfortable I was going to get with it. And so I'm just kind of left going, okay, I guess that happened. And I don't, I mean, I was going to say, I don't know what else to say. I've gone on about it for quite a bit, but it's kind of all I've got. And then we've got the very end with the other princess. Oh God, I can never remember. All their names are too similar because Rhaenyra is Viserys's daughter. This was his sister, right? Rhaenys. I can't remember. Anyway, she grabs a dragon and she hauls butt out of there. And this is the scene where I was implying earlier shows the absolute disregard for the human life of commoners, which again, like it would help if I knew how the show wanted me to feel about her as a character, because I'm not sure the show didn't frame it in a way where it seemed clear to me that I was supposed to view what she was doing as monstrous because she spared the royal family. But what she did was monstrous because she killed dozens, if not hundreds of people. And the show doesn't seem to think anything of that, which troubles me a bit, just in terms of the perspective of the narrative itself. Like, again, it's fine if the characters don't care. And for a lot of them, it makes sense that they don't. But I kind of like the show to give me some assurance that, yeah, sure is messed up that she did that. But again, the show, this episode, maybe it's happened else time. Maybe it just stood out to me more this time. The show really seems to just be presenting things and not leaning in a actual moral direction of the narrative itself. And trying to explain that could take me forever. But like, short version is the morals and the ethics of a story are not always the same as the morals and ethics of any given character within it. You can depict a character doing horrible things, but the overall framing and tone and mood of the story can still get you to like them or get you to understand that this is horrible. It's all about framing. And the framing, this episode especially, was highly neutral in a way that I actually kind of found a little bit off-putting. And also, like, why? Why didn't she burn them? Like, okay, I get maybe hesitating with Alicent because she with the interaction they had earlier, but like, what you've just done clearly puts you on an opposing side in a conflict against these people. You have the power to at least attempt to end that conflict before it starts, and you just don't. Why? And also another why, while I'm at it, why isn't part of the small council's plan to pretend that there's any other witness other than Alicent to the king's final words? Why would they not? Since, when they kill, what is his name, Beesbury, once he's dead, everybody in that room is on board. Well, except the head of the guard, he resigns. But like, once Beesbury's dead and that guy's out of the room, everybody in there is on board. They can do whatever they want. Why would they not fabricate additional witnesses? Why would they not go, well, he whispered this to the queen and the queen summoned us to bear witness, so multiple people heard it? Like, what? There's nothing stopping you from doing. Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you leave it as literally the only person's word is someone who very clearly has a vested interest? I mean, granted, they all do, but like you could have strengthened the case. I don't know if it's trying to go for like, this whole, well, the queen said so, and that is enough because she rules, and that's just what's going to happen now. We need no other witnesses, except that, like, if these guys have been planning this thing for as long as it's implied they've been planning this thing, then they should have a little more caution than that. And even if Alicent isn't comfortable with that kind of fabrication, what's she gonna do if they claim, oh, and we had additional witnesses? Is she gonna stand up and go, no, I was literally the only one? That's gonna weaken her son's claim. She wouldn't do that. Why would they not? I don't know if the characters are stupid or if it's a plot hole. Somebody was dumb. Whether it's the writers or the characters, I don't know. Because again, it's okay for characters to make mistakes and be stupid. But for how many of them were in on that plot, nobody thought to do that? Really? I don't know. It's not a bad episode, but it's one that I'm very on overall. There's your review. Whatever that means. I don't know. House of the Dragon. Episode 9, what are your thoughts about it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills. Be curious to see how this wraps up and if it, dares to take a moral stance as to whether or not any of these people are anything close to in the right or at the very least properly condemns some of their actions. Because again, the neutrality of the framing is starting to bother me. But in any case, Patreon's what pays the bills, allows me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me that way, like, share, subscribe, help me out as well. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. All right, time to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Loli, Becky Sparks, Fernobulax, The Poodle, Zach, Bookworm, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. Thank you for your support. If you want to hear me try and say your name while this little guy tries to chew on my earrings, well, you can check out the Patreon for the support tiers that get you a shout out. Thanks so much. You are a pain in my butt.